The night President Ali announced the date for the general and regional elections. And that has created a new dynamic in the country. Political parties have started preparing for those elections. And I issued a statement shortly thereafter that we in the People's Progressive Party, we are ready for those elections. We are looking forward to those elections. And we are looking to win those elections. And we are going to campaign on our track record and what the PPP stewardship, leadership in this country has meant to the development of our country and its people. And we do not need to go back to our long history of progress made under the People's Progressive Party. But if you were to do that, you would see that we've consistently been the sole party that has fought for people's freedom, for democracy, and to ensure that all Guyanese can prosper. That track record could be supported by clear evidence as to the change in the socioeconomic status of our country and the well-being of our people. I'm not going to do that today because we have done that often, laid out the evidence of our history in government, and we will do so on the campaign trail. We can, on the basis of just what was done in these 4 years, 4.5 years, 5 years approaching, can make a credible case that there is no other political party that could have led these achievements for our country outside of the People's Progressive Party. We have the plans for the future. We developed the plans for the transformation now, and we have plans for the future. And we have been consistent in implementing those plans. And we are led by the right person. We have Dr. Irfan Ali, who has been the president for several years and will be our presidential candidate, who has had a wealth of experience as a minister in the government, in a massive portfolio that has delivered enormous benefits to the people of this country. He, at one time, held the combined portfolios of tourism, water, and housing. And then as president, he has led the transformation from the front. He has grown in stature internationally. He is recognized now as an international statesman. He represents this country at the major fora around the world with distinction. And he is knowledgeable of every aspect of government, and he can speak fluently to every plan that we have laid out, plans for economic transformation as well as social upliftment. with an ease. He does this with an ease that very few politicians in this country can do. And you need that type of leadership. These elections are not about taking risk or joking around. They're about the future of Guyana. And only a leader supported by a solid team that has demonstrated competency and achievement can lead this country into that glorious, prosperous future that awaits all Guyanese. And if you're an unbiased person in this country, you would see that there is only one political party that has that leadership that operates on the basis of achievement for the people of our country, that has consistently taken the most pressing concerns of our people and translated those into policy making, whether it's in the health sector, education, housing, job creation, security, or recreation. We have listened to the people and we have crafted plans in each of those areas for the transformation of our country. Well laid out plans. So that's why I'm saying that we are ready. We are ready because as no other party has. If you listen to the PNC or APNU, I don't know what to call them now, and the AFC, they're still putting out these childish, infantile flyers that have no connection with the reality of the country, the economic reality of the country, as well as its financial reality. It is like just a person sends an idea to them and they think that they must immediately convert that into policy without looking at the long-term implication for the country. They're even so sterile that Mr. Norton just recently promised to make UG free. When any sensible person in this country knows that university education is free now. He just promised that a couple of days ago. Well, maybe yesterday. And that is what we are contending with. An opposition that has no plan, absolutely no plan. Now, election time, they're going to put out a manifesto of promises that they do not intend to keep because it's not grounded in a plan. That's one. They have no achievement in the past, so they can't go on the campaign trail and talk about the children of our country because they deny them rights. They can't go and talk about to the miners or the sugar workers or the rice farmers or even the public servants. I met a policeman a couple of days ago and he said to me that I voted for APNU in the last elections, and the first thing they did, they took away our 1 month tax-free bonus. We used to look forward to that 1 month tax-free bonus every year because it helped us around Christmas time. And then when in the year, the very first year, we got a 7% increase in our salary, and they took 50% for themselves. They lost me at that moment. They immediately, the first year they were in office, they lost the vote of that policeman. Because he said, I expected that things would have been better under them. They promised that. Then he told me about people who lost their jobs in his family. and the callous kind of interaction that they had with people who were close to them. So what are they going to go and say to the joint services now? We love you again? How would the joint services or believe, or members of the joint services believe a single word that they say? Because they said it in 2015, and Granger was much more credible, I think, than Norton and Nigel Hughes, separately and combined. And he said that, and they didn't do it. So who would believe a Norton or a Nigel Hughes, who have had a long track record of deceitful statements and dishonest statements? So they're in a sad shape. They may be ready. They claim they're ready for elections, and I wish them well in these elections. I'm glad that they are ready, as we are. But it is going to be a contest of ideas. It has to be a contest of ideas and about competency too. Because we can't take a risk. So the 15,000 part-time workers who Norton claimed that are criminals and we're using to infiltrate protests, etc. If the PNC wins, they lose their jobs because they had signaled that. Now they would change their view on the part-time workers because we're getting closer to elections. But they had signaled that they would terminate those part-time workers. And if they thought that includes not only people on the coast, but maybe 2,000 indigenous persons, and the 3,000 CSOs now would have to worry that their jobs would go again because they didn't see them as necessary in the first term. Months after they got into office, they terminated them. And after claiming that they don't believe in that we had too many taxes, they then went and instituted 200 taxes. So the miners and the farmers and those who are working in industry or the forestry sector may have to expect a value-added tax back on equipment like they did and that we removed. So people are worried about their track record and their lack of achievement, but they're dangerous for this country, dangerous for its democracy, but also dangerous for economic progress. And so that is what the contest will be about, those issues. And as I said before, the reason we are ready is because we've kept faith with people. I have, that we're going to go around the country. I see the inimic flyers that they put out, the silly things like, oh, you need more oil money. That's all they talk about in their flyers that they circulate. Government not giving you enough oil money. And they're discriminating against you by not building roads in your community, when people's reality are different. We have, like here, this is going to come out. We have all the promises we made. And here, what we fulfilled. You will see that we've gone way beyond what we promised, way beyond what we put in our manifesto. We're not a party of underachievers. That is why so many people are joining the People's Progressive Party, coming to us. That's why we have grown, because they see this as a party of progress, development, and a party of unity that is bringing all the people of our country together. And so we will campaign on our record. And it is a phenomenal record of transformation in these years in spite of the constraints that we've had, COVID and others. So we are ready. Now, although they said that they're ready, they have now, I see a news article which says opposition questions GCOM's readiness in election date announcement. And it caused me to think that they may not be so ready as they claim. So, but no political party can say we're not ready. So then the easiest thing to do is to say GCOM will not be ready. Now, you've had an announcement by the president. The elections were set for more than 3 months after the date of the announcement. In Trinidad and Tobago, on the 18th of March, elections were announced. On the 28th of April, they had those elections, a mere 6 weeks later. In Canada, the announcement was made on the 23rd of March. They did it on the 28th of April, about 5 weeks after. Here we have nearly 100 days between the date of the announcement and the elections, and they're claiming that GCOM can't be ready. Why are we so different? It's the same process you have to go through. We had continuous registration. The end of, I think Friday, this cycle would end. They would extract a preliminary voters list, hopefully, and then we'll have a valid list. We go through nomination day, and then you have the elections. But I expect that the same commissioners, the 3 commissioners representing the opposition, AFC and PNC, that they will take an obstructionist view of these elections and preparation for the elections. We know of the notorious role they played in 2020. Some of these same commissioners, we know of the role they played. That's well documented. They were combined. They were part of that cabal that's tried to slow everything down in that period. And so I did not expect anything different from them, because they got instructions from the AFC and the PNC to now, I believe, slow down the preparatory process at GCOM. I was hoping that they would want to reset their mindset, that they are commissioners, they're supposed to serve the country, although they're appointed by political parties, and that they would try to support the process so that we can have free and fair, open, transparent elections on September 1st. Because after APNU AFC loses, there would still be commissioners there. And they have an opportunity to do so. But given their initial comments, I'm not so hopeful any longer that they will become obstructionists. And I saw GCOM itself responding by putting out a press release to the allegations they made at their press conference about being blindsided. So I'm not going to get into what the content of that press release from GCOM is, because it explains in great detail how the consultations took place between the president and the chair of GCOM, and that the chair acted in a deliberate, lawful manner, having been briefed by the CEO of the secretariat, the election secretary, or GCOM, and the announcement of the president was not just lawful, but in order. So I really hope that all of the political parties will be supportive, if they support democracy, will be supportive of an open, transparent process. We've already invited observers to observe these elections. I'm hoping that good sense would prevail. And this is an opportunity also for the PNC and AFC to shake the stigma of rigged elections that have been associated with them, not only historically, but from the most recent general and regional elections in 2020, that they can be mature and that they can also have a fair contest. And if they lose in a fair contest, that they're mature enough as a political party to accept their defeat rather than make these senseless excuses that they often do. So now it's Venezuelans voters are going to vote in these elections. And you remember when the media asked Norton about evidence of Venezuelans registering, he didn't have a shred of evidence, could not even give one person that was registered, could not do that. And so that is their new mantra now. Of course, we heard about the bloated list, etc. So I expect they will return to that. I saw Nigel Hughes, I don't know, he comes out occasionally, made that point about 100,000 Venezuelans who will be voting and all sorts of nonsense in the elections. They need to grow up. And hopefully they understand that this is one of the prerequisites for us working together in the future. I've laid that out. I've laid out some of the prerequisites. One is an acceptance that democracy and respect for the vote for every citizen of this country is crucial to any engagement in the future. The second is a policy that doesn't see people by race, but see them as Guyanese, which they're wedded to, the policy of seeing people only by the color of their skin or their race. So I'm looking forward to these elections. We've started our preparations. I'm pleased now that GCOM has a manual. I hope that the media will try to get hold of the manual that GCOM has put out. It's one of the first times in history that we have had a published manual in such a detailed way, outlining roles and responsibilities of every official, GCOM official, as well as those of the political parties. It sets out almost the entire process for the conduct of elections in a single document. And this only happened because we changed the Representation of the People's Act to ensure that there would be transparency in these matters, given the experience of 2020. So now no longer would the CEO have the manual in his head, like what happened the last time, and no longer would an RO be able to change the instructions 3-4 times on election day, like Mingo did. Everything is now in that manual. And I would urge members of the media to get hold of the manual and also to propagate it. GCOM needs to publish this in online, in the newspapers, everywhere else. They need to educate. Well, it's shared with the political parties already, so they can train their polling agents using the manual. There's some international help to make sure that people understand their roles and responsibilities in this manual. It would be very important for the country and could avoid a lot of misunderstanding that often takes place around the election period. I am worried for APNU to find polling agents now. They would ultimately find people, but you have to really be hardcore to subject yourself to the abuse that their polling agents from 2020 suffered, not from the PPP or anyone else, but from the PNC and AFC themselves, when they said that the PPP bribed all of their polling agents to sign the statements of poll that were used in the recount. This was that they said that we bribed every one of their polling agents to sign those statements of poll that they, after the count, they all had to sign on it, all the parties. And that they signed, they were bribed to do that. If your party accuses you of that, they'll throw you under the bus for everything else, like what they did on that ill-fated day when they mobilized people to go on the road, and when the looting took place and the stabbing of street people, etc., they disassociated themselves from it, and then those people are now in jail. They're in jail, left there to languish in jail with no representation. They did that, then they disassociated themselves and left people in the lurch. They have a history of doing this, throwing their own people under the bus when it suits them. And so they would have a really hard time getting people to do that, because they will accuse them when the PPP wins the election again. They would accuse them of all sorts of things, except to admit that they're the ones that were responsible for their failure. So we are ready as a political party. I'm pleased that so many people have been calling Freedom House. I've met with a ton of people from their camp who are totally dissatisfied with the leadership in both parties, AFC and the PNC. They don't see any future in those parties for themselves. In fact, they don't believe those parties are capable of managing their own affairs, internal affairs, much less that of the country. And so they see the changes under the PPP They see that we are a party welcoming to people regardless of their former political views, that we are a diverse party, ethnically diverse, religiously diverse, with gender diverse party, and they like what they see, and they also see our laid out plans for the future. The digital society, you know, financial literacy, financial sophistication, more land to the small farmers, to the small miners, changing the taxation system, you know, reducing taxation over the period, supporting education fully, investing in a massive way in education, healthcare, safety. They like what they see on infrastructure development, the sport quality, and they're coming to us. And they're welcome. People who stood on the platform and were critical of us in the past have now changed their views of the PPP because they see we work for Guyana and we have the laid out plans. And so I've seen several people over the last few days alone, people who headed political parties in the past, like I saw the head of Shazam Ali, who was the head of TCI in the last elections. He's endorsed the People's Progressive Party and will be supporting our campaign. Mr. Schuman himself, who has been, who got, I think his party got the most votes of all the small political parties in the last elections. He has also endorsed the PPP Civic and President Ali for a second term. He laid out in great detail the evolution of his thought, what he wanted, what he struggled for, the neglect under the PNC, the AFC, APNU AFC, particularly of indigenous people. He made it clear that he was in favor of the growth of indigenous people, and then he laid out the achievements of the PPP. And he said, I want to be associated with the achievements of the People's Progressive Party, particularly for indigenous communities. And he reinforced a point that we've been making. You recall what Keith Scott said in Parliament, that if Amerindians got more land, they could not benefit from oil and gas resources. This is a minister in Parliament saying this on behalf of the government. You had many MPs there, including a vice president who is indigenous. And they never said a word in condemnation of that statement. So I did not know, I heard it, but I did not really confirm it. And he did yesterday, Schuman, when he said, he explained his experience going to meet the head of Lands and Survey, along with the head of the NTC at that time, Joel Fredericks, and Schuman, who was deputy. And he said, the head of Lands and Survey, who's responsible for these leases that are given out, the demarcation exercise, etc., said to them, Amerindian people not getting any more land in this country. That's the head of Lands and Survey telling them, the head of the NTC and the deputy head, that they were not going to get any land again. And and he spoke of the arrogant manner in which he did so. But that was the prevailing condition. And then he said, not a single NGO, not the APA that claims that they represent Amerindian people and trying to sabotage the LCDS now, or have now seconded, I believe, one of their members to the AFC. And the last elections, they seconded their head to the APNU, who became the deputy leader of the list. They didn't say a word in condemnation of it. Not a word. So how would you believe now that they have changed their policy? So all these lofty promises about land titling again. Forgive me, but if you were an Amerindian and how would you ever believe anything that they say? And so I'm grateful for Schumann to speak of that experience, because sometimes it's the personal experiences that you have that can give you an insight into people's true personality, and therefore and the nature of their thinking. And so I'm really pleased with the people. There are lots of people more who are going to come to us. They see us as a party that will win the elections. They know that they want to be part of the campaign. I've spoken to people on the ground. Our activists are raring to go. They're just excited about the campaign. And unlike the lack of enthusiasm in the other side that I see, they're ready to go. And don't be deluded by the trolls on the Facebook or the other social media platform. They are trolls there. There are thousands of them, people who are fake, created by the opposition or other forces to portray the impression that they're doing extremely well, or they would do extremely well in the upcoming elections. We'll examine that in a little greater detail just now. So let me speak a bit about the Venezuela situation. So you know, on the 25th, Venezuela held the illegal, fraudulent elections that it described as electing a governor and officials for the Essequibo region. That was how Venezuela described it. Now, those elections were a failure by any standard. It was such a failure that the vice president of Venezuela had to resort to a blatant lie by posting a video to her page which showed people crossing from the Demerara River, going the crossing in a boat here with Starbuck Market in the background as people crossing the border to vote in Venezuela. That's the level of fakeness and desperation in the Venezuelan regime. Something that could have easily been debunked. to delude themselves that people were going to cross the border to vote in these elections that purported to elect a governor for Essequibo and other officials at Essequibo. Nobody crossed. Nobody crossed. It's a rejection. Nobody wants to be part of Venezuela. This is sovereign Guyanese territory. They recognize that this is one of Maduro's gambits to deflect attention from his worries at home. And the elections came and they went. Now the Venezuela fake propaganda machinery would describe this as a success. And if you believe them, it's a resounding success. More voters actually voted than they had on the roll, they would claim. But we know it's a failure. And the people of Guyana, every child, every man, every woman, they know instinctively, genetically, that every bit of the 83,000 square miles of our territory belong to us. You don't need, as I said before, a PR program in Guyana to tell us that. And it was demonstrated right across this country, from communities and schools in the border with our flags there, all in the border with Venezuela, all the way to Crabwood Creek and to the border with Brazil. Our people, our children, came out and they spoke resoundingly with a single voice that every bit of this land belongs to us as Guyanese. So that should send a signal to the Venezuelans. And there was this view that Venezuelans who might be here would go and vote, and we made it clear that anyone who attempts to do that would face immediate deportation, and anyone who tries to undermine our sovereignty will face charges. That's from the Guyanese perspective. This is a major issue for us. But I'm so pleased that our country stood up, all of our people. Now, the opposition is trying desperately to find issues to mobilize people around. They can't mobilize anyone around their claim that elections, the PPP rigged the 2020 elections and the elections would be fraudulent. You see it from the very pathetic protests that they have. Nobody shows up because they don't believe them. They hijack the tragic death of a young child and try to exploit it for political gains, and they fail to polarize our country, which they were hoping for, using the tragedy of this child. But it's not over as yet. They're still trying on that issue in the face of all of the evidence that is before them. Now, things are going too well. We're getting close to elections, and they now have to create a controversy around our foreign policy as it relates to the borders and the sovereignty over Guyana. So Norton believes that if he could do that, maybe then people would believe the lie that they have often told, that the PPP is unpatriotic. We don't love Guyana as much as they do. We will not defend Guyana as much as they do. We sell out Guyana. Listen to Cathy Hughes falsely claiming, although the PNC offered in 1989 that as part of a proposal, the access to the sea, they blame me for it. She blamed me for it, and it's part of the ruling from the court too. Today, when she falsely accused me of trying to give up territory. I pointed out the last time that they have broken solidarity before for political purposes on border issues, particularly when the settlement of the maritime boundary with Suriname was being discussed. So here again, they wanted to generate some issue that will divide our people, have them fight over something that we never fought over, including the worst extreme, these vile so-called influencers. We never fought over this, but then it became a controversy. That's what they want. They want to generate dissent. When things are going too well, it doesn't bode well for them. So Norton walked out of the parliament, did not support the motion, he and his AFC and the APNU did not support the motion in parliament. And they did blame lack of consultation on the motion as the main reason for this walkout. But if you look at, so it was portrayed fairly in some media houses, and then in a very political manner in other places, his walkout. So most people felt that you could have criticized anything in the motion, make your point, say the government did not, the lack of consultation led us not to have the following things in the motion, be specific. Nevertheless, the motion, and I hope you've read the motion, it's comprehensive, several pages, covers almost everything under the sun. It was drafted carefully by the Ministry of Foreign Affairs with major input from our lawyers who are now pursuing the case or representing us at the ICJ. Comprehensive motion. He could have easily said, there are deficiencies in the motion from the floor, nevertheless, I will support the motion. And what was the motion really about? The key things in the motion that are there was, or this motion was specific because of the fraudulent elections that were being held in Venezuela on May 25th that I spoke of earlier. So the motion was to show solidarity by reaffirming the 1899 arbitral award. Now everyone, that's non-controversial. Secondly, the motion was to condemn Venezuela's defiance of the ICJ provisional orders, which were very, very clear that these elections must not be conducted. So that was the second purpose of the motion, which was clearly enshrined in the motion. And the third was to seek international solidarity for the ICJ position and Guyana's position on the 1899 award. Three simple things. It was specific. It was not a motion to deal with strategy to fight Venezuela or anything else, because that's what, I come to that in a moment. That's what AFC said we should have put out our defense strategy. Pure nonsense. You know, who puts out their national security position everywhere in the world? Anywhere in the world. What our army would do in case we have an incursion. What would we do with the U.S.? What assurances did the U.S. give us? We must tell the whole world about that. The motion was specific to the border issue. This, not the border issue, to the elections. And these were the three key elements of it. It was not a plan to deal with PR and everything else. It was just about the three things I mentioned. So he could have stood up in Parliament and said, I will vote for this because that's in the motion, these elements. However, I have the following concerns. Now, did they have an opportunity before the debate of the motion to reflect their concerns? So I saw Guyana Standard by Abina Rockcliffe, an editorial which says Norton was within his right. Hear me out. Right? And the editorial seeks to say that he's right to walk out because there was no consultation. But this is complete nonsense. This is defending PNC's incompetence. On the 14th of May, this motion was sent to the chief whip for in Parliament for the opposition, Christopher Jones, with an understanding that they could get back because we were seeking joint. Gail Teixeira told him, let's sponsor the motion jointly that we'll go forward with. It had to be put to the Parliament because there is a timeline. You had to get it done before the elections in Venezuela. You couldn't do it after if we're condemning the elections there. So it had to be done before the 25th. So Gail Teixeira spoke with him and said, it would be advisable if we sign this motion jointly. She sought to get him back the following day because they had a time period based on parliamentary rules in which to submit the motion, you have to submit it days before the debate. So they were running up against that timeline. Nothing. The motion was then circulated to the opposition by Parliament on the 16th and placed on the order paper. From the 16th to the 23rd, there was room for amendment. They could have easily called and say, we have this following specific comments to make. Can you insert these? Or on the floor, I will suggest them, and would you support them? They had an opportunity to do that all these days. Just make whatever changes they wanted. None of it. Incompetence again. And then Norton shows up to grandstand. We have changes. We were not consulted. They were consulted. That's how Parliament works. You get it beforehand. You then share your comments and an engagement. We must bring them to the Marriott and sit down and say, let's draft the motion together. Or lawyers had an input into this motion. You have to be careful when you draft a motion of this nature. And so it demonstrated major incompetence on the part of the PNC and the AFC. So he was not within his right. This is a bullshit editorial. Nonsense. You were incompetent. You could have shared it. And trust me, if today I saw his comments about what was left out, if you ask him what specifically did you want to change in the motion, you trust me, he's going to have a hard time trying to tell you anything specific, given the nature of what we were there in Parliament for, this specific engagement. It was not an engagement on our national strategy in relation to Venezuela. It was merely we were there to show national solidarity in the face of these fraudulent elections that were to be held on the 25th. It is justifying nonsense and laziness and grandstanding in the Parliament. He caused us now, for one of the first times in history, maybe the first time, as Todd said, and the PM, where we didn't have full solidarity on the 1899 award. They walked out on a reaffirmation of the 1899 award. They walked out on the condemning Venezuela for defying the ICJ provisional ruling. They walked out on the provision which says we will seek international support for the ruling, for Venezuela to respect the ruling. That's what they walked out on. So sometimes when you see these editorials and they seek to justify nonsense, pure nonsense, but it's part of trying to polarize our country again, So APNU supporters would say, look, the government is making solidarity, and then this fake view that they are stronger, they have a better crafted policy than we in the PPP on borders. I don't want to trace their history on borders. If I were to do that, it would be a sad kind of expose, because I can start with the New River Triangle, with the maritime boundary with Suriname, and all of I don't want to mention the other things that they as anything relation to Venezuela. But they had a sad history of big blunders on these border matters, and a history of lying on these issues. So I've seen, since we just came out of the NTC again, something, maybe I just address that before I move on to some of the more contentious matters. Not that these have not been contentious that I spoke of earlier. So again, this Starbuck News predictably tried to characterize the NTC as, and the two shows and the Amerindians as suffering under the People's Progressive Party civic period in office. And I've been watching some of the two shows talk about, in fact, we should have recording of all of the discussions. I don't know if they were recording the discussions, but they may have. And almost every two show from every area would start off by saying, we thank for all the progress. This is not PPP telling them to do that, because they could have done it on the APNU too. Here the list of things that happen in my community. And in my interactions with them, I have to say, you know, thank you very much for saying all these good things about the PPP, but can we get on to the problems? Because if every one of you will list the list of achievements that you have had in your communities, the roads and the schools and the health centers and the playground and all of that, the livelihood issues and the support of the government, then we'll never end the conference. And I'm here more to look at problems. In fact, where in the world would a government say to people, don't tell us about the good things we've done already. Let's move on to the things that we want to address in the future. And you would hear this throughout the conference, because we would not have completed the conference in 5 days had we just gone down that route. They should just get a feel for what people, and many of them said openly, I'm supporting the People's Progressive Party in the next election, unsolicited, because I've seen the changes. They should get that there. So they go and pick one issue, like the cost of living issue, the cost of freight. And yes, freight prices are high, but they don't say that APNU on the high freight prices had a VAT to a value-added tax that we removed. But flying things into the hinterland will have costs because of the airline. And we said, made it clear, we're going to address this, and if we can't address it through cutting the margins of the middlemen, who are now making most of the money from what the airline people told us, then we're going to do it through a commercial arm of the GDF to fly things into some communities where we can cut the cost of freight for the hinterland. Because the indigenous communities, they will, like some will benefit from cheaper electricity now and free electricity, but not all have like what we have on the coast, so subsidized electricity, subsidized water, subsidized gasoline and diesel, most of it. Well, that would affect everyone. On the coast, to keep the cost of living down, lower mortgage rates and stuff like that, because that's what government has done in the coast to address cost of living issues. So it's just a negative portrayal of everything, and a distortion, a total distortion. The Starbuck News and the APA have been at a game of distortion of what's taking place in these indigenous communities. So I notice, I normally don't watch much local news. So I just putting on my shoes, and my sister is here from overseas, and they watch YouTube all the time in local news. And I saw Travis Chase on a newscast. He came from Barabina. So he interviewed 2 persons in Barabina in Region 1. And the people said, for 6 years, we didn't see anything in our community, etc. Now, I met the 2 show from Barabina. We're going to do, we were trying to do the concrete road into Barabina, but for 3 times now, the things disappear in this one. So the internal roads, now we are working on the internal roads. Barabina is a small community in that region, in the Mabaruma sub-district. So then he goes on to say, the government set aside $1.7 billion for hinterland roads, but then shows all of these footpaths that's now being done, etc. It's now $1.7 billion, it's much more. But let's deal only with the sub-district of Mabaruma. That will never resonate if people in sub-district of Mabaruma, but it's on the coast for unsuspecting people. Look, the government did nothing in this sub-region. Well, we've just done all the roads in Mabaruma. We're doing 3 kilometers of roads in the settlement, concrete roads, at a cost of nearly $600 million. The road is built up to Hossoror, so we built the road, concrete road up to Hossoror. The next phase is to get to Wauna. We're doing the internal roads in Wauna now. You've had a school over $1 billion school done in Hosororo, a secondary school. I met the Tushao from Whitewater. He said to me, you know, I had a 1 kilometer of road, concrete road, the president promised when he is there. I finished the 2nd kilometer and we're going on to the 3rd kilometer of road. That's only in that sub-district. I can come to the Moruca sub-district or Matakai in the region. Just a negative thing. 2 persons in Barabina. And, oh, it's the tiny community. You talk about the subject and watch the election results in that area. We won it in opposition. You watch it too. So what Travis Chase, this portrayal is a false, it's a fake portrayal of what is really taking place. And I see something, maybe I do have it here. I think I might have left it somewhere there. Oh. So I see this week, the Kaichor News did an editorial, U.S. warning to anti-free speech officials. And I don't know who this is on. U.S. to ban foreign officials over flagrant censorship on social media. It's not the social media where you say, kill people. What the U.S. is talking about, Rubio is talking about, if you read the story, is where there are restrictions on the platforms, like Facebook platform in Europe. They're saying now you have to give the data, etc. Laws that are being passed in Europe and in the UK. It's a ban on the platforms themselves, not on the people. But U.S. warning to anti-free speech officials, and then went on about the PPP being abusive of the press. You know that's not what the U.S. is talking about. In fact, President Trump has said the following things about the press. Fake news media. He said it. Fake news media. So like what Travis Chase did, that's fake news, and a lot what Stabrook and Kaichor is the crown jewel of fake news. Is the epitome of fake news. If President Trump, were here, he would say not only fake news media, President Trump said prostitutes. That's what he said. He said lamestream media. He said failing New York Times, disgusting and corrupt, very dishonest people in the media, scum or low-life reporters, un-American. President Trump has been, if he were here and he had to deal with Kaichor News and some of the others, all of those things would be applicable. So it's not that they are defending fake news, the US government, and about these media outlets. They're just speaking generally about the stuff. So the fake news industry in Guyana, they're desperately hanging on to anything out of the international community to justify their fakeness, the falsehood that they portray. Every week, the Kaichor News invents stories. I don't think any other country has had to deal with this massive kind of fraud that they call themselves. You know, press. They're press. But it brings me back to things like what Travis Chase did. It's fake. It's false. To portray that nothing happened in the settlement. People know in that area. You talk to them from the whole sub-district, the Mabaruma sub-district, and they would tell you that things have been transformed. You know, APNU used to levy taxes. Up to 2015, there were no taxes levied on goods in like water and drinks and other things coming into Mabaruma. After 2015, New Start, you had to pay taxes on all of those goods coming into Mabruma. They put up a customs outpost there, and people had to pay taxes. They're talking about cost of living now. They were levying taxes. We removed those taxes back because of the distance of the location. And it's harder to get goods into these areas by bringing great relief to people there. So they were collecting like $4 billion in taxes from that area, and then they would build a bridge for $40 million, and then we expect you to praise them. Like, I don't know, they probably spent maybe 40 or 80 million for the bridge in Maruka. The only bridge that they talk about now, one bridge across the Maruka River, which already was failing. So compared to maybe the 600 bridges that are being built now, concrete bridges on the main highways and everywhere else under the last 4 years. So they were very proud of that. And then after the elections, they said the people in 2020 in the Maruka sub-district were ungrateful to them because they built the bridge and they didn't vote for them. The one bridge. So they took 40 million or so, built a bridge, but collected $4 billion in taxes from that the Region 1 that were not levied on people before 2015. That is the warped logic of how they manage things. So any sensible person could see that. But a lot of fake news will take place. Another expression of fakeness is Nigel Hughes. So I thought Nigel Hughes claimed, I saw a Demerara Wave story, which says, but Nigel Hughes said he was not being responsible for the company's portfolio for the past 24 years. That is Exxon portfolio. So this was a story in 4th of July 2024. Remember, he told us, oh, I don't deal with Exxon matters. It's someone in my firm said for 24 years he's not represented Exxon. So I saw in the Guyana Standard that it says here, the senior counsel said, this is Mr. Pollard giving an interview, said Hughes only acted once in a matter where the GRA had sued Exxon over an allegation that it had caused a false declaration to be made by former broker Rams Logistics. So GRA had sued Exxon Mobil. This is last year, I think it was, or 2 years ago. And he said, oh, Nigel Hughes was representing Exxon there because he had expertise in that matter. It was a criminal matter. So, lies, inconsistency. And then when asked, so Nigel Hughes claims he's withdrawing from representing ExxonMobil, but his firm is still representing ExxonMobil. So the reporter asked, but your firm is representing. How come he's withdrawing? How many times is he withdrawing? He withdrew in the past. He said he never had anything to do with it. Right? He never had anything. How he's withdrawing from nothing, that he had nothing to do with it, but his firm is still the firm contracted by Exxon. So the firm is not withdrawing. He is withdrawing, but he said, there's nothing to withdraw from because I'm not handling it before. The inconsistency of this all. So here, you can recognize nonsense when you hear it. Now, when asked, would he not be getting money from the firm if he owns part of this firm? This is his firm. Their firm, it has his name on it. This is what the reporter was told. That would depend on how the firm is set up And there are many ways a firm or partnership is set up. Now, we're not asking a general question, a hypothetical question. We're asking a specific question. There is no one fixed format, and so the way we share revenues is not automatic at all. Revenues are not automatically shared with all of the partners, said Pollard. He also expressed his reluctance to comment further on the firm's financial arrangements, noting, this is interesting, I don't think that that is your readership's concern or a legitimate area of concern to your readership. So we must not be concerned, the people of this country, how the money is shared. That his firm earns, that Nigel Lewis has a share of, we must not be concerned. So effectively, this is another bullshit story. It is. If people don't see through this nonsense, just trying to create a headline for the elections, he is representing, and if Exxon were to say this, then Exxon would be, no, I don't want to use the word again, but really, would be doing the same thing to us. It's pure nonsense, unadulterated. These are 1,000,000% nonsense. And they just put this out and believe that the people of this country are so stupid that they would. Well, you may have a few that actually believe the Primus' story, right? But really, this is nonsense. Looking for the headline. And since he's out, his biggest claim to fame now, Nigel Lewis, in the last few weeks, nothing about his party, is trying to get the appeal to go ahead after two persons who were involved in the Bartica massacre, killing of people, were convicted, and now they're dead. He wants the appeal to still go forward. So the two persons who were in Bartica, who massacred people, killed many of them. He wants, they're deceased now, they're deceased. Nigel Lewis, that's the headline he made this week. He wants them to go forward. I see the gas to energy project has resurfaced with Sticky Finger Patterson mentioning about this. And so the Starbuck News, I think, did an editorial and clearly optimistic. It says here about this project, really basically saying the PPP promised early that this would happen. So it says clearly optimistic timeframes were mulled initially, including the start of work in early 2021 and completion in 2023. I don't know how we could have started work. We're in the middle of COVID. I told you here that I had a team, a task force, made up with local officials from Lands and Surveys, from the Ministry of Natural Resources, a special unit from the AG's department, which came in from time to time, with ExxonMobil being part of the task force, with weekly meetings and reports. I met with them over 80 times before we even tendered the project. To get to that stage of even tendering for the project, we met over 80 times, because a project of this nature don't happen easily. We had land issues to deal with, land tenure, a whole range of issues, design issues. You didn't. So clearly, they don't understand the nature of the work that was put in to get a project of this nature, of this type going. Patterson could speak glibly about these matters because he just had an unsolicited bid, did a feasibility study that was illegally approved, that he's charged for now, 150 million, where they handed over to him a couple of photos, and he wanted to build a 3-lane twisting bridge that would have had to be open across the river, and was pursuing it. That's how we approach project. They knew a long time about this project. From 2016 they could have started. They knew that we would have had gas. They didn't do anything. We moved it along, and the timeline was, part of it would have come in earlier in the year, but the project would have been completed by end 2025. Clearly there is a delay on that. We've explained this many times, and the PM said that it's delayed until about April to June of next year. So, and it should have been completed, the whole project, by the end of this year. So the project would be built. It's under construction. The project would be completed. The power will be generated, 300 megawatts of power. We're building the transmission mains now to take the power, about 500 million of transmission mains, the high power steel frame to all towers, transmission mains to take this power to all the way along the east coast to Berbice and back to Parika and eventually to Linden. That is what it takes, not to run it on these lantern posts like now. We run the transmission main on the post, so anytime somebody hits them, they would collapse. We have a major outage, you can't transmit power. That's being done now. That's the magnitude of the work being done. And it's going to happen. So they don't have anything much more to say. They, as I said before, they always know how not to do things, but they can't come up with a single plan how to do it. Can't initiate anything. They could have initiated the East Bank Road. Oh, the East Bank Road is a little bumpy, Rubio mentioned it. But you were there, you could have done something about it. We had laid out we had left the alignment a long time back. We built it because we just imagine without that road, where we would have been on the main road now, if it wasn't built in this term in office, bumpy or not. The East Coast Road, lots of complaints, and I do agree. There is another editorial in the Starbuck News that talks about how they work. And I agree, sometimes I'm infuriated too with the way people work, the contractors. And sometimes the ministry, the engineers, and the supervision firm, often they're firms that we hire, don't hold the contractor to account, so it creates additional hardships for people. Like they would start digging up a road in the middle of the day, or at 4 in the afternoon when the traffic is going up the East Coast. That's the time they would come out with a man would just come out with a little sign and put it there and start digging. And at 4:30, it just, I don't want to say what again, but it really upsets me. It upsets me. They have this. Sometimes the one in Chinese, like in Mahika, going to Mahika, they dig up like little spots along the way. But along the railway embankment, they have to do it in a very spotty way because it's dependent on GPL and the private contractors to move the water mains off the main road on one side of the road, because we can't move the transmission main on the northern side of the East Coast Road as yet until we build the high towers to move that transmission main onto them. Only then we'd be able to move those transmission mains. So they're focusing on the southern carriageway, the 2-line. We have distribution mains there, but you still have to move the water distribution mains off and the electricity distribution main so that it can work. So they go between the two, sometimes the 2 posts, and then build a piece of the concrete drain. Then they skip another one and go and build a little piece. So they can proceed with the concrete drains, but it looks unscientific, but because of what they have to do there. So people need to understand that we're trying to get the work done without causing the disruption. And sometimes it does cause blackouts, etc., when they have to now move off the lines. But it's part of the development process. But I do agree with sometimes this inept way, crazy way of people working. And as I'm saying this, I met with the truckers yesterday. They came to see me, who are working in Linden, and we had a good discussion, and I pointed out what I did last week. I was shocked to see the Demerara Waves headline which says, Jagdeo talk up Chinese contractors in Guyana. When all that I was saying, speaking about how much work is being done and how little of it is given by the government to Chinese companies. I spoke of the $300 billion that we're spending in housing to develop all those plots. And I said, based on information from the ministry, not a single Chinese contractor is doing any of those work. It's all done by Guyanese. $300 billion for all the housing development. 40,000 that's developed so far, and another 25,000 house lots before the end of the year. That is being done by Guyanese. On the Heroes Highway, about 10% of it went to the Chinese. On the almost every other infrastructure, all the community roads are done by Guyanese. The Linden to Sioux Dike Highway is a Guyanese and Trinidadian company. That's a big contract there. The only contracts that the Chinese have, big contracts in this region, are the Timeri to the Stadium Road to widen the road 4 feet and repave it, the East Coast Road, but they already subcontract the delivery of sand and stone to locals, and the bridge in this region. And now they want a contract in Berbice, but that hasn't started as yet. That's it. And then the transmission main, they got, I think, 1 or 2 of the lots on the transmission, but that hasn't started as yet. That's it. I was saying that all of this work. Then I pointed out of the 67 sand pits we have now from moving up from 17, every one of those sand pits are given to Chinese, the Guyanese people. They may have a Chinese man operating it, but they're all given the licenses to Guyanese. So we moved from 700,000 tons of sand to 12 million tons. That means more work for the same truckers, etc. And the same thing with the stone. From 6 quarries, now we have 16 quarries, and all were given to Guyanese, the quarry licenses. However, some of them had Chinese people to operate their quarries. And then I spoke about the hotels that are built in Guyana too, owned by Guyanese, but they, on their own, not government, they selected Chinese companies, like the airport is owned, I think it's Basu there, the airport, the Aden, the Pegasus, and I think Kings and the others. And they're choosing the Chinese contractors, not the government. So I pointed out that there's a fallacy that the Chinese are getting. Billions or hundreds of billions of dollars of work are going to Guyanese companies. If you go down by the big road that's being expanded there, the Guyanese contractors by the national park. Those are Guyanese contractors. People who have grown over the years from not being able to get anything on the APNU now to doing that high quality work there. And so I pointed that out. However, I said that no Chinese truck that gets duty-free, or any truck for that matter, that gets duty-free concession for the quarries must be transporting. And they have committed to working with me to look at the capacity. So maybe at some point in time, like what we did with the local content law in the oil and gas sector, If we have good national capacity and people are investing in trucks and stuff like that, the Guyanese people, we may have to dictate that these companies hire Guyanese trucks, like what we did in the local content law. But first of all, we have to have the data on that. And so we had a good discussion yesterday. I committed that all the government contracts that, like in Linden now, we have a stockpile there. We're soon going to award billions of dollars of road contracts in Linden, that those moving from the stockpile, I talked to Edgehill, to their places, to the contractors, will they only local trucks or people who operate in Linden, etc. And so I think people recognize that only because of this large-scale vision of the PPP that there are opportunities even for these guys. So I had a good meeting with them, and we will meet again to discuss. I think they will see some improvement there because I've had some further discussions that I will not speak about here publicly, but that would see some immediate major changes in that area. So the latest today, and I expect people will be asking me about it, is would be the Mohammeds attending court facing charges of submitting a fake invoice to GRA. Now, if you listen to the Mohammeds, they have this way of playing victims and invoking the name of God for everything in the public domain. So they would have you believe that he's facing these criminal charges because he wants to run for the presidency. And they are godly people. Everyone else is ungodly. I think earlier in the week, Azruddin Mohammed announced that he will be a candidate for the elections. And he promised, according to the Demerara Waves, integrity. Now you, after listening to what I have to say, decide for yourself if you can associate the word integrity with the Mohammeds. You'll have to decide for yourself. And often, an earlier point I was making, that in the unguarded moments, you then get to see the true nature of individuals and people in their unguarded moments. So if you try to understand the true nature of a person by the propagation of 200 fake profiles, or by edited speeches that are posted on social media in a very controlled environment, you run the risk of missing the true nature of people. So today, the father who was in court, who was in a very pious way, said that all he wants to do now in his life is to serve God, and posted several videos about it, obviously making a play for the religious-minded amongst our midst, or people who are of faith. You saw the true nature when confronted. The expletive-laden, vile comments and threats to someone who is a reporter. Let me see if the GPA and everyone will now condemn this. Because just imagine if somebody from the PPP had done that, or even the PNC, you would have had 1,000 condemnations of it. The vile condemnation, and it reflected for just a brief moment the true nature of the individual. When confronted in an environment that is not a secure, manicured, curated environment. In curated environments, people can wear a nice suit and tie and portray themselves to be anything in this world. But when you actually face scrutiny and you have to answer to a media that asks you questions, and you have to account for your deeds, you can't explode and cuss people out unless it's in your true nature. And they have not been tested in that way. Remember, all the time it's just carefully they run down, hand over to engines or something, a little house, and all. You have a media outfit that says, oh, great philanthropy, etc. Now, this is just the initial test. That is why I'm saying a press conference will give us clarity on several matters. If you want to go to true nature of people, go back to November 24, 2010. And I said, I told you right here, I did not know about this issue. I was president, but somehow it missed me. I didn't realize that this took place. But this is what Starbuck News had. 3 security guards are in excruciating pain after they were tortured for several hours on Saturday after being accused of stealing a quantity of items from Mohammed Enterprises on Lombard Street where they worked. Security supervisor, 63-year Sukraj of Lot 10 Camp Street, along with Imtiaz Bacchus of All Boys Street, All Boys Town, and Usman Buru Sahade, age 59, of Mid Road, said they were repeatedly struck with a baseball bat, had soapy water poured into their mouths, and were gagged and bound with Scotch tape before being threatened not to report the matter. The men alleged that they were brutalized by 4 or 5 persons, one after the other. Sukraj sustained the brunt of the blows. Both of his hands were broken and X-ray showed. His head is visibly swollen and he finds it unbearable to stand or walk. Bacchus, according to a medical report obtained at the Georgetown Hospital, sustained 5 fractured ribs and a badly swollen right foot. Jagdeo, called Fat Boy, has black and blue marks on both arms, has trouble hearing and sight in his left eye, which is swollen as being affected. There's a subsequent story to this one that Starbuck News said that Mr. Mohammed, Shell Mohammed, was abroad, and when he called, he came back and he called and apologized for his son doing this. Away from the camera, away from all the PR, that's the true nature of these individuals. So you can portray whatever you want with the right social media people, and unlike what just happened last week. So they have a troll that sits down next. Would Team Mohammed be ready to launch? Please launch. We're urging you to launch. And next door to him, the other person saying, yes, we're launching soon. The same person handling 2 accounts. One account, yeah, would you launch? And they then switch over to another account and say, yes, we're launching. It's all fake. If you go to see how many locked profiles are there, locked profiles or who have only 5 or 10 friends or something, on the making comments all the time. So it looks like a groundswell. It is all fake. Can you imagine the lunacy of someone saying that they surveyed 80,000 Guyanese and 60,000 said, or 60% said they will vote for him. He'd win the elections. Now, the biggest survey firms in the world, in the United States of America, which has over maybe 300 odd million people, a poll sample is less than 80,000 people. They don't choose a poll sample of 80,000 people. In the United States of America, he surveyed 80,000 Guyanese, and they said that 60% will vote for him. It shows delusion. Something got to be wrong with you. Something has to be wrong with you to believe that to even believe that. And I know why it came out, because they have some website and the people said they show him or the same fake profiles voting on the website all the time, and they showed he's leading. But that is done by people who are sympathetic to him, and obviously some may even be duping him to collect money from him. So this is a very important issue. Now, coming back to the first contention, is it the PPP discriminating against the Mohammeds because they're running that led to the United States of America sanctioning them for the export of, in 5 years, over, not the export, the smuggling of over 5 years of 10,000 kilograms of gold? Did we tell the American ambassador to say they have a mountain load of evidence? Around the world, the United States of America, maybe now on OFAC sanction, has like, for the whole world, maybe 1,000 people, less than that. And he's one, this family is one of those. Around the whole world. So that's one. Now, it is not us. We didn't smuggle the gold. And then the father tries to justify this and say, where in the world people want to pay their taxes? Well, we're not talking about evading little taxes on your income, or, we're talking about $11 billion of taxes on just 5 years of smuggling the gold. But the father says, what's wrong with this basically? You know, if we evade a little taxes. $11 billion. You know what's that? That's like all, we got $14 billion was given to the two shows from the LCDS. And $11 billion, we could give all the children in Guyana their cash grant for a year. That's what we're talking about. And then we must be grateful for the pittance that he gives back to some people. That's what the impunity of it all. So, I think they were trying for a plea bargaining with the U.S. Why did they try for the plea bargaining if there was no truth in the matter? So that happened a long time. That was when? July of last year. That was long before he even announced his intention to run. But did we tell the U.S.? So he's claiming he's being persecuted and he's being a victim. So that's the first thing. Secondly, they on the vehicle. The vehicle, you recall the entire story. The entire story is that he, on his Facebook page, posted that he paid $94 million for 3 vehicles, including the Lamborghini. He then put on the Facebook page his tax receipts. So suddenly, this brought the matter back to the GRA. The GRA then, 2 days later, after that, this was a long time back, not now, long before he announced his intention to run, to say, no, that's not the right taxes. And their invoice is a fake one. I didn't raise that matter. He raised it in the public domain, which led the GRA. We did not know. I did not even know how much taxes he paid, because I don't ask GRA. I don't look at a man's vehicle and say how much taxes he paid on this vehicle. We work to change the country. We don't run after those issues. He brought it up in the public domain, then dishonestly claims that he has paid $75,000 for it, produced a fake invoice, dishonestly puts that in an affidavit before the court. Then the GRA, went to the banks and saw that he transferred $695,000 US to the company. They then asked the US Justice Department through an MLAT request to get how much he paid from abroad, and they submitted the US Justice Department the true invoice for $695,000. How is that persecution? This is a criminal act. A fake invoice is a criminal act by our laws, unless we must change the laws to suit the Mohammeds. And it started a long while back. It didn't start now that he announced. So they like to play the victim. The victim, he's hoping, would give him sympathy among people. And his announcement, I think, is calculating that if he announces, then the U.S. may be a little bit more, they don't want to maybe come after a politician, etc. It's to save his own ass. That's what he's trying to do. Not that he cares a damn about anybody. He didn't care a damn when he was torturing these people because he claimed they stole a couple of, I don't know what they stole from the thing, soap powder or something like that. He didn't care about it. You think he cares anything about these people? So, and you see the true nature. So he said, apparently, that President Ali helped him clear the vehicle. So, you know, and he has evidence of this. Now, I would have hoped that he would have produced this evidence and say to the magistrate or in the high court, look, the evidence is here. Not the fake invoice that he submitted. So let him show that President any evidence. In fact, remember they said they had a lot of evidence about PPP wrongdoing, and the very first meeting, their press conference I had, I said, go to the media. Put everything out that you have. So let him release the evidence that President Ali told him to submit a false invoice to the GRA, a fake invoice to the GRA. Let him release it, because no such thing happened. I spoke with President Ali. He said, not at all. And then tried to drag me, spoke with me about some vehicle, etc. So is it that, one, is it that it's a fake invoice and somebody helped you? Or is it that nobody helped you and it's the invoice is the true value of the vehicle? You see how they're slipping out from the crime. The crime is that you submitted an invoice, a fake invoice, for a vehicle that's worth $695,000. You said you bought it for $75,000. That's the crime. Who did the crime? It is the Mohammeds. That's the crime. You can put a lipstick on it. You can put lipstick on the pig, whatever. But it wouldn't change the nature. It's a pig. It's a pig. And in this case, that's it. It's a criminal act. So don't look for sympathy out there, or because I'm running and the PPP is afraid of me. You see any evidence across this country that the PPP is afraid of the Mohammeds electorally? Where you see a mass exodus from the PPP to him? In which ways? It's the Ramayas or the others who are there. I don't even know. The one from Essequibo Coast or the Charles Sogrin who was with AFC. Where you see this mass exodus from the PPP? In fact, people are moving in droves to the PPP now. You think they would endorse a party that they believe would lose the elections and all of that? They have great confidence in where we're going. And so he is delusional. He needs medical help for all of these things. But they slip out of the key issues again. The smuggling of gold, which is a criminal act. The submission of a fake invoice, which is a criminal act. The torture of the people, a criminal act. I can go down the long list. I can go down the long list of paper shorts and everything else. This is a criminal cabal. And you can see the association, all the godliness. If you look at what happened in the yard on that fateful day when the GRA went, that's the Islamic culture. I have great respect for the faith of Islam. And if that was Islamic. So they can switch everything. They can do their big PR, etc. Right now, this guy and the family can't own a bank account in Guyana. That is how bad it is. Because if they own a bank account, the bank will get sanctioned by the US. No bank in Guyana will give them a bank account, will not make a money transfer on their behalf. Can't do business with them at all because they could be at risk of sanction. Imagine that's what is happening now. Nobody, he can't own a bank account in the country. He or his father or the family. That is as bad as it is. The fallacy of people around him not being sanctioned. They tried to portray this as a lie. So the primus is issue, oh, that was not because of association with Mohammed. It's everybody. So just imagine he puts up a list of candidates. After the elections, when he loses, because he's not going to make much difference, he will be looking out for himself. He's looking out for himself. He then leaves everybody else who was on that list exposed. They're all going to be exposed. Imagine Primus got her visa pulled because of just association with him. And and what would happen to those people? So I wish the people well who would be on his list. And if you have anybody, he said he'd pull from the PPP and the APNU. And if we have anybody from the PPP who can't, I don't want to say the S word, the stupid word, but if can't think, he's welcome to have them who would expose themselves that way. Well, he's welcome to have those, but I know the PPP supporters. I know the PPP supporters. And nobody, they've recognized that without the PPP, that this country is in a sad shape. And APNU supporters have recognized this too, and others. And that's why they're rallying around the PPP. And yeah, so ChatGPT don't win elections, or bots that you put on people's pages every time they make a negative comment, they weigh in there, and all of them, yeah, he's great, etc. The hundreds of people that are on fake accounts that don't win elections. So I'm actually looking forward. I don't want to dedicate more time to show him. Thank you very much.
Good afternoon, Dr. Jagdeo, blogger of Kite News. Last week you said government has a depletion policy. Will that be made available to the media anytime soon? Secondly, apart from government pumping foreign currency into the market when necessary, is there any other solution that government can implement to stop the escalating price for the US dollar, because it can have an impact on the cost of living? And thirdly, will Prime Minister Mark Phillips be Ali's running mate again for this second term?
So the first one, by the way, we have put on our website now the two audits that you complain about all the time. It's on the ministry's website. For months and months and months, Kite News has been saying, oh, the government is hiding the audits. We put them there, nothing. Y'all probably didn't even read them. We put all of the environmental permits for all of the projects on the website that were not there on the APNU. They're all there. We have the monthly production figures, a whole range of things. So we have all of these issues. The depletion policy could be put there too at some point in time. So we are now rushing now to satisfy Kite News. Even when we make documents public, they don't read them. So we've done enough. I've explained the last time. Key element of why at this stage our policy is to get as much oil out of the ground as possible, given what could happen in the future because of climate change. If you approach, let me just give again, if you approach a rate where it becomes, where the oil prices are close to the cost of production or the break-even point, obviously you have to sit down with the company. And thirdly, we took the approach that, which is recognized now in situations where the government is not a shareholder, like Suriname. Suriname becomes a shareholder. They're investing in the project, the oil and gas project. Of course, that comes with risk too. You know, you have to raise money, you have to put in taxpayers' money. That in that sort of situation, your ability to practice a aggressive, proactive depletion policy becomes more limited. Read up about all of those things. But you will, yes, the answer is yes, at some point in time. I'm now going to go back over the US dollars because I've explained it a million times before about how it's related to the management of the economy, about the need to not have a sudden appreciation of the currency, which could harm all of the exporting sectors. And therefore, we are going to assess the demand. We're trying to clean out some of the demand that comes from not for legitimate transactions, and some demand that comes from Trinidad. Nevertheless, we will keep supplying the market as we see the need to. So we don't want the rate to depreciate too much, and we don't want the rate to appreciate too much. And I don't want to go through that whole long, the theory again, and what we're trying to do. That's a long haul. What was the third question? Oh, Mark Phillips. As General Secretary of the party, I would say we have not had all of the discussions, but in my view, the answer is yes.
Good afternoon, Dr. Jagdeo. Just 3 quick questions. Wendell Jeffrey, Channel 2 Headline News. Now that Mr. Mohammed has announced that he's going to be a candidate, do you think the police should pursue charging him for the smuggled gold if they have the facts to prove it? Would it be?
That's a matter, because you're asking me as a politician to tell the GRA what to do. And no, but yes, but this matter did not originate today. The matter has been in the public domain for a long time. What if the US tomorrow says that there is going to be an indictment? What if that happens? Should the government not act on it? So I don't want to deal with hypotheticals. The GRA must make, just like I did not tell them to respond to or the president didn't tell them to respond to Mohammed saying, posting his receipts, stack receipts, and saying he paid 94 million for 3 vehicles, which turned out to be false. We didn't tell them to say, go after them. They went through the MLAT request, they sought US assistance, because it's their job to do that as a technical agency. It's like saying, treating politicians preferentially. But so I don't want to deal with the hypothetical. I don't want to deal with the hypothetical. They will, in their own judgment, decide on these matters.
Staying on the Mohammed situation, normally political parties, effective political parties, have internal polling that they do. What does the PPP's internal polling show as it relates to Mohammed running? Is he pulling votes from the AFC, the PNC, the PPP? What is the internal polling showing that his effect is having on the political race in Guyana?
So let me tell you, I don't want to talk. Let the AFC and the APNU talk about themselves. We have a lot of polling done. So we know exactly, and it's detailed. And we didn't do 80,000 people. You know that's impossible, and that's a fake figure. Anybody who says that got to be certified. All right? So it happens nowhere in the world for people who know about polling. So we did our polling. Our polling stacks up extremely well. And not going to make any impact on PPP supporters. Not going to make any impact on PPP supporters, because a lot of them are aware when he was doing so-called philanthropy. They thought that, well, he's good with the PPP, so they may have been positively inclined to him. Now that it's different than when you run and contest against the party. So we've done our internal polls, I can assure you. And APNU did the internal polls too. They know where we stand now in the elections. That's why they're so scared. They know where we stand.
Polling showing in regards to?
I'm not going to deal with percentages now. But let me tell you, it's an extremely good, favorable number. We're now, remember the last election, APNU said they'd win 62%. Granger said he'd win 62%. We're now into that. We'd win the elections handsomely.
And finally,
we'd win the elections handsomely. And because of the work that we've done. And people need, just if you had an analytical mind, you would just look at what's happening, the momentum, who's coming to which party, and then also the local government results. That has to matter in areas that are traditionally happening. You tell me, has any party in a major way been able to take the PPP stronghold?
Finally, Doc, the local trade court in the United States has just voted unanimously to block the tariffs that President Trump has imposed in an arbitrary way, Guyana being a victim of those tariffs, 38%. Do you agree with the court stopping the president's tariffs in as much as Guyana would have been a victim of those tariffs? And are you hoping that those who sued for those tariffs to be stopped, are you hoping that they prevail in as much as it would benefit Guyana if they do prevail?
We don't want to interfere with the politics of the United States of America. President Trump has outlined in the campaign trail his policy on tariffs. He's implementing that policy. He won the elections. His opponents there were the Democrats. They have a different economic philosophy. I guess that's playing out in their courts, and that is for the Americans to decide. When we engage as a government, we engage with the executive. We don't engage with the courts or the opposition. So the executive in the United States of America has announced a policy. We are obligated to respond to that. And if the tariffs are blocked in the long run, then that's a different matter. However, we're not leaving anything to chance. We have already engaged with the US government. We've made our case. Minister Ashni Singh went up there, met with the US trade representative. We made a strong case about how our surplus arose, and we are looking forward to working with the administration to ensure that our exporters don't confront or have to bear that burden.
Good afternoon, Dr.
Yes.
Jagdeo, Mr. Slow, Starbuck News. My first question, I just have a few questions here. As it relates to the Cathy Hughes case that was dismissed today, can you provide to the media any documentation on the ruling? My other question.
Yeah, I saw the lawyer sent it to me, but it's not in the public domain as yet. I don't know. Maybe he didn't send the whole thing. So I didn't have time to discuss with the lawyer before I came here because I started preparing for my press conference at 12. So I had a lot of issues to read through here and then prepare. So if it's available, I will send it to you.
Thank you. Secondly, you did spoke to...
I just know she lost the case though. Everybody knows that she lost, and I think the court ordered, since she claimed 150 million she wanted, so the court will order costs. The costs have some relationship to what you claim. I think that's the rule. So people need to understand that too. Yeah.
Right, sir. Secondly, I'm sorry.
Some of my friends, I saw some comments coming from them. You have to buy some steak or something for them, or something to eat and a drink and stuff. I don't know. I don't collecting the $4 million. The lawyers will deal with that before they call me and they think I collected the $4 million from Cathy Hughes. Yeah.
Has the PPP set a date on when it will officially name their presidential candidates? I mean, there are concerns about other persons showing interest. So can you speak to that?
About what?
The presidential candidate, officially naming the presidential candidate.
Yeah, we will do that. What I told you today, these are my views as Bharrat Jagdeo. I will give you the views later, the confirmed thing about what will happen later. The confirmed presidential and prime ministerial candidate when the time comes. You're going to see that on nomination here, but you have my views there. I think Kerr Fernali did a fantastic job, and Mark Phillips, a great job as prime minister. These are two people that I would vote for if I'm unbiased in this country any day, if I'm unbiased. Well, of course I'm biased, so I'll still vote. I'll vote for them as general secretary of the party. But these are two persons. They have great, coming back to the integrity thing. You remember the integrity that I spoke of? The man who promised integrity. Gold smuggler, fake invoice, torturing people, all of that. The great integrity that he'll bring to public office. So, yeah, you'll get that formally once the party machinery weighs in and have the discussions and stuff like that.
All right, now,
but that's my view, personal view so far. I hope that came across. Those are my personal views at this point in time.
Now, my final question. Given that Mr. Daniel Seram has now indicated his support to join the PP, and the fact that he's facing charges of domestic violence, which is a big issue, as we know, in Guyana with some recent cases. For persons who may have concerns about that, can you respond to that?
So the logic is that when he was PNC, it didn't matter much. But the moment he says, I'm going to support the PPP, then these charges matter. The same thing with everybody. So James Bond is a bad guy now because he's come to the PP, but he was great when he was with the PNC. The same thing with Mark Ferdinand. There were good people under APNU, but the day they said, I'm changing my support along with my democratic right, that is, they become bad people. So what if Norton endorses the PPP tomorrow? Now Norton has been accused of rape by Vanessa Kissoon. Does that disqualify him from running as leader of the PNC? He's been accused of rape by Vanessa Kissoon. So this is the double standard in this country and by some of the media houses in Guyana. The moment you express support. Now, we in the PPP, we have a policy, we don't endorse violence against anyone. But violence against children, against women, against anyone as a means of settling anything. So we don't endorse that. We fight against it strongly. Our track record would show that some robust pieces of legislation were passed to fight domestic violence and violence against children since I was president. We set up agencies to support women and children. We have quadruple funding to many groups. I talk about Blossom Inc. and Child Care. Their subvention has grown massively because they deal with forensic audit for women who are abused. That's the policy of the government. But people are free to have a political view in this matter and to support whomever they want to. And Daniel Seram can do that, and James Bond, and Mark Ferdinand, and Schumann, and the scores of others. They suddenly don't become bad people because they say they're voting PPP. But they were great the day before, or minutes before, they say they will support the PPP. How come that didn't become an issue all the time? So, this is the double standard that we have in this country. Now, if Daniel Seram is before the court, he'd have to, as we said with everyone else, you'd have to face the court. You'd have to face the court and the charges there. But that doesn't preclude him from saying he's going to vote for the PPP in the next elections. If that's the case, if we're using that standard in the media, anyhow, don't go down that route. Yes, go on.
Dr. Jagdeo Shakwan, Gil DPI. Dr. Jagdeo, a number of government ministers and yourself have outlined what the ideas will be like for this if the PPP is to win another term in office. Can you say when the public can expect the document, the manifesto document, for them to be able to scrutinize?
We've been speaking about our manifesto promises every day. So we're not keeping it a secret like APNU. You know, they will release their oil and gas strategy only if they win the elections, because they don't want the PPP to steal it. That's why that's what they're saying. So we are outlining a lot of the things we will do already. We know wages and salaries in public service, we've spoken increase. We talk about the children's grant, we talk about old age pension, public assistance, small land for small farmers and small miners, a development bank for zero interest loans to small and medium scale businesses, a digital society rolling out a national security plan that would see technology now in more of the villages to fight crime. We talk about expanded infrastructure, a new 4-lane road from Rosignol to Mahaika, and then from the bridge to Goshen that would allow us to complete the whole network, driving from the airport all the way to Perican 4-lane road, across a bridge there, and then all the way to Crabwood Creek on 4-lane road. That's done. Bringing the 12 hospitals into operation and expanding the services, looking more at other costs that families face for education. We have absorbed most of those costs. More job creation, diversification of the economy. We've listed some of the sectors. agriculture, agro-processing, ICT, a whole range of things. So we have laid out a lot of this, recreational facilities. Every ground in the country we want fixed, apart from the big stadium, the velodrome, all of this for high-level events. But in every community, every ground fixed with lights, recreational facilities, all of that for young people. That sort of thing, we've spoken a lot about it. And so we are now pooling together under various heads. I said to Ashni Singh, because we had a ton of suggestions here, to group them under various heads. The president has been sharing his ideas, everybody, and we have, we're now going to go to public consultation, because we did it in 2020 to discuss it first. We'd say, here are some ideas we have. These are some of the comments we got from the public. This is what we plan to pursue. Do you have any additional views on these matters? And then, and then come out with a manifesto. But we have not been shy about saying what will be in it, what we've committed to do already. So that will happen. But before that, people will see some of these broad ideas in the documents that we already have, like that we'll circulate widely. So like this one deals a lot with what we have, the promises, and what we have fulfilled, our track record, the future, and everything. And then we can't also forget giving a page to APNU, because of what they did in the 5 years. You know, we'd give them some space in our documents too. Can't forget our brothers across there, APNU and AFC.
Yeah, just one quick question. The Bellevue pump station remains behind schedule. Will government be taking any action soon, or is there...
Which Bellevue? That's a Critic one?
Yeah, my friend
Or
Critic
as soon
over
as
there.
Critic come in, you ask me about the Bellevue station.
No, I see when he come. I just see it. Right?
Oh, you see Critic here just come in now, the Bellevue. Critic, I saw you are featuring heavily today on social media. Anyhow, yes, go on. Yeah, yes, I guess I don't know what action. You talk to the ministry. I haven't followed up on that project, but you can get that from the Ministry of Agriculture and ask Critic himself, since you should do an interview with him about that project, what his plans are. Yes, go on.
Good afternoon, Trina Williams, Ghana Chronicle. The opposition has been...
Not at my press conference. Not the interview must not start here. When I'm done with my press conference, go, right, let me listen to this reporter afterwards. I'm sure we can find good time for you. Yeah.
The opposition has been organizing and conducting more fundraisers over the past few weeks. Could you speak about your party's financial readiness?
Yes, we have, we're prepared in every facet of their word. We've substantially secured a lot of our material for the elections and all of that. You know, the usual stuff that you have to use. For a year now, we've been planning logistics for these elections, not recently, almost a year. We have an internal mechanism that constantly plans and updates our plan. So we have our logistics on the ground, we've identified people, we have training done in the past, we're going to enhance the training now. So we're ready in everything. I see they're doing quite a few bingos and a couple of other things too, and fish fry. Not that anything is wrong with that, but the thing is, anyhow, I might as well send and buy some of the fish too. I heard they do a good fish fry at Congress Place there. So, yeah, might just send. I'm not going to say I'm getting it though before they drop some croton oil in it or something like that. No, in Norton. But I wish them well. And truly, as General Secretary of the party, yeah, it's a competition. It's a competition. Elections are about competition too. You know, the things get heated sometimes, but really, it's a competition of ideas. And we are ready in all manners, all the way. Okay, thank you very much.